denizens of the night. Welcome to another episode of the macabre, the terrifying. Tonight, we'll explore the horrors of a traumatic brain injury. No, I'm not going to change the show into a spooky, serialized medical drama. Unless... No. Tonight's story isn't even about the brain injury. It's about the things that Ben can see after the accident. Swirling colors, light trails, all kinds of visual disturbances anytime anything moves. Except this one thing. This story is called Colors Are Bleeding and Deformed Children Are Stalking Me, and was written by RohanRedfang.
Every time I swipe my thumb across my phone screen, a smear of blue light follows it, slowly fading like a fan of melting watercolor. It hangs between me and the screen until my brain catches up with my eyes. I've gotten used to it, but now it's making me feel sick again. Tapping the correct keys is a pain. Autocorrect and predictive text are saving my ass. I've been searching on Google, scrolling through pages and pages of results without finding anything. I even tried asking ChatGPT, but it spat out a wall of bullshit. Told me that nothing like the creatures I described existed, that it was probably a consequence of fatigue, stress, or some other factor. Of course, even a robot thinks I'm crazy. I'm under the duvet, and I'm sweating so much my shirt feels sticky, and not because of the heat. Last time I checked, my room was still empty. No monsters. I'd feared they could walk through walls, but apparently they can't. I've locked the door and all the windows and told Katie I needed some time alone to prepare for an important exam because she kept texting and calling me. That door must stay locked. I hope Katie won't decide to come check on me. Damn it. I shouldn't have given her a spare key to my flat. If she opens that door, they'll come in. I texted her and told her not to worry, that I'm fine, everything's fine, I'm just studying. I hope she listens. I'm Ben. I'm a vet student who lived an amazingly boring life for 21 years before a stupid horse turned it into a nightmare. All my friends, relatives, and my girlfriend Katie know that I'm a rational person. Someone who believes in things you can see and touch, things you can cut open to see the anatomy. My motto was, if you can't find it anywhere, it isn't real. Until a week ago. I've always dreamed of becoming a vet, ever since I was a kid. Always loved animals. All of them, even the bugs. Mom and Dad never approved of my choice to go vegetarian right after kindergarten, but they couldn't do much about it. So, yeah, I love animals. Except horses. Fuck horses. No, I've never done drugs. I drink beer like once a week and that's it. 6 months ago, that's when it happened. Field rotations were the worst part of being a vet student. Tough, but mandatory. We were at this big equine facility just outside of town. I can't remember exactly where. I just remember the smell of hay and the stench of horse dung. They told me what happened once I came out of a 2-week coma. This stallion must have been spooked by an insect or something and kicked a support beam in the barn. The wood was rotten and heavy. It came down like a guillotine and hit me straight in the temple. I didn't even feel it. Everything went black, like someone had yanked the plug. I was very lucky. They airlifted me. Emergency craniotomy. They had to cut a piece of my skull because my brain was swelling. The first thing I saw when I finally woke up was Katie's face. She was crying and holding my hand. Mom and Dad were there too. But something was deeply wrong. She spoke, and I heard her voice loud and clear. It painted, literally, a yellow and green aura around her. "Ben? Ben, you're awake? Oh my God!" she said. As her lips moved, her words turned into a soft light. Then I blinked, and 2 seconds later, the colors faded. So weird. I thought I was still dreaming. The doctor explained it to me later, showing pictures of a brain model. He used a lot of words like sensory cross-wiring and other stuff I couldn't remember. He basically said that the connection between my eyes and the part of my brain that took care of rendering the senses was permanently damaged. The blow had rewired my perception, causing my sight and hearing to merge in a chaotic way. He gave me an easy-to-understand example. "Think of it like a GPU that has been overclocked until it melted," the doctor said, tapping a finger on the picture. He pointed at a specific section of the brain. "The wiring is now crossed. When the brain receives a signal, it doesn't know where to put the information, so it spills it onto the screen, your vision. You'll see visual artifacts, Ben, behind every sound and movement. Your world is going to be vibrant. Overwhelmingly so, I'm afraid." "Vibrant, huh? Vibrant," he said. He made it sound like I'd just gotten a cool new filter. The real thing was way worse than I'd imagined. When they took me home, reality was completely broken. See, if my cat wiggles her tail quickly, I don't just see it followed by a simple blur. I see it leaving a shimmering comet's tail in the air like a deck of cards, matching the colors of her fur. I see a brown tail where it was half a second ago, an orange one where it was a second ago, and then a black one where it was 2 seconds ago, but all at once. I can no longer ride my bike or even cross the street alone. The movement and the sounds of cars and people turn the world into a chaos of smeared color. Watching a movie makes me vomit. The dialogue and action create a storm of lights, washing out the screen completely, forming surreal pictures. When I walk, I have to take it slow and stare at my feet, because if I turn my head too fast, the whole world becomes a soup of lines and colors. It's nauseating. I'm basically living inside a corrupted file. My family has been very supportive. Dad offered to drive me to university every morning. Mom insisted on coming to help clean my flat, and Katie came every day to help me cook. I would stand at the kitchen stove, gripping the counter, trying my best to keep the room from spinning. My ears would hear the sound of her knife against the board as she chopped vegetables, but my brain would see her like a smear on the timeline, knife raised in the air. Then, boom, dozens of orange and green waves jumped up and down like a slinky toy. My brain worked and struggled to stitch the senses together to form something that made sense. It was so exhausting. Learning how to pour myself a glass of water without making a mess took me a week. After a month, I started to get used to living in a world of melting paint. I was learning how to recognize the auras and how to trust my ears and touch more than my eyes, like blind people do. For a while, I thought that, after all, it wasn't that bad, that I could actually learn to live with this. It couldn't get worse, right? Wrong. A week ago, that's when I saw the first one. My condition had started to worsen. I had to keep my head as still as possible while studying and use noise-canceling earphones to avoid turning the words in the textbook into a spiral of colors. I needed air, so I shoved myself up from the chair, eyes fixed on the floor, and I went to take out the trash. The air was cold, but the sun was pleasant. I gripped the bag and stood still, staring straight ahead at the wall of buildings and the empty streets. Then a long trail of crimson ribbons followed a car driving past. They all disappeared when my brain caught up. I took a deep breath, trying to let some tension out. And there it was. Down there, near the communal bin, something was crouching. At first, I thought it was a homeless child, wrapped in sheets, maybe trying to pick up something from under the bin. But the posture was wrong. The proportions were all wrong. His spine was curved at an unnatural angle, and it was completely asymmetrical. I blinked. Maybe it wasn't a child. Must have been a trash bag or a pile of dirty clothes someone had thrown away. It had to, because that thing was too clear. In a world where the tiniest motion or sound left a rainbow trail, this thing was still and perfectly solid, no bleeding colors. But when my vision caught up with reality, it was gone. I looked left, right, everywhere. There was nothing. No smear, no trail of ghostly colors. In my world, everything left a trail. Everything still did. Just next to the bin, some kids ran on the sidewalk, dragging streaks of limbs. But that child, or whatever it was, didn't. It had vanished, just like that. I shook my head and rubbed my eyes. The street was just the usual street. I told myself it had been a stray animal. Sick, probably. Maybe a fox that had wandered into town. My vision had already turned back to the regular rivers of overlapping chaos. Right. It had probably distorted the image of a skinny stray into that weird thing. And about the missing trail, was it a new glitch in my brain? That's what I told myself. A perfectly logical, scientific answer. 2 days later, we were walking back from a checkup at the hospital, Katie and I. These long smears of metal and light stretched down the street and died at the crossroads. As always, I walked head down, holding Katie's hand. She guided me, just like those dogs for the blind. "The doctor told me the swelling is almost completely gone. I'm so happy," she said, gently pulling me. Her words glowed a soft purple. Her shoes squeaked against the sidewalk, creating yellow sparks with each step. "I can't wait for—" She didn't finish the sentence. She bumped into my back as I stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk. I tightened my grip on her hand. "Ow, hey, Ben! What's wrong?" she asked. My eyes were fixed there, staring straight ahead of us, at that ruined brick wall bordering an abandoned garden. Among pulsing trails of people walking totally unaware of it, that child stood about 20 feet away. He was crouching near the wall, perfectly rendered, so much closer this time that I could see his skin. Red, and he wore no clothes. He was completely hairless, and the skin was stretched so tight over the bones it looked like it was about to tear. And the head, his head was... "Ben, you're scaring me," said Katie, moving ahead of me. She pulled me and waved her hand in front of my eyes, blinding me for a few seconds. "What are you looking at?" "There," I said. "Watch out, that kid, right there." I pointed at the wall, at that thing. My shoulders heaved as I struggled to breathe. Katie turned her head to look at it before turning back to me. Her eyebrows arched. "What kid? There's nothing there. Look. Right there! It's right—" The thing was gone. There was just an old wall, with overgrown bushes and weeds reaching the top. And just like the other day, no visual trace telling me he'd run away or jumped over the wall or anything. Gone, again, like never been there. Sorry, thought I saw something, I whispered, unable to speak in my normal tone. My heart was hammering. Sorry, never mind. Just my broken brain playing tricks on me. Katie asked me if I wanted her to stay at my place for the night. She insisted on coming up to make me some tea or cook dinner, but I almost had to beg her to go home and rest. I lied and told her I had a massive headache and needed to sleep in absolute silence and darkness. I think she was sad, but she kissed me and left, wishing me good night. Her colorful trail slowly faded down the stairwell. I grabbed one of my university notebooks and ripped out a page. Then I pulled out a black pen and sat at my desk. I didn't know why I felt the need to do it, but I had to get it out of my head, like the illusion of exercising it. Drawing with my condition was not easy at all. It would have been easier to do it with my eyes closed, maybe. The pen between my fingers multiplied into dozens of shapeless, ink-stained copies, leaving a black light on the paper that took 5 good seconds to turn into a static line. I drew a curve, waited for the colors to fade, let my brain catch up, and then drew the next line. It took a while, but slowly the shape began to form. First, I traced the unnatural curvature of the spine, followed by the asymmetrical lengths of the legs, or whatever those things were, so thin and covered in thick lines where the bone met the skin. As I shaded the horrific skeletal torso, my stomach turned. I dropped the pen. It clattered, bouncing against the wood and falling off the desk. My eyes followed as it trailed through the air for almost 10 more seconds. I was about to throw up. The more I stared at the drawing, the more the contents of my stomach rose. Past the monitor, the window seemed to call me, towards that spot behind the communal bin where I'd first seen that thing. The street lights were on. Nothing was there. I didn't sleep that night, because every time I closed my eyes, I saw that impossible shape standing on 2 skeletal legs. The vision was so clear. It moved in a perfectly normal motion, just like the whole world used to before that horse ruined my life. And the darkness of my room felt like the only curtain hiding things that nobody was supposed to see. The next day, I dragged myself to university. Dad drove me, like always. I did it because I wanted to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. I was just stressed, yes. I'd challenge anybody to live with this condition for a single day without going crazy. After morning classes, I went outside to eat lunch. I sat alone on a bench in the campus garden with a tomato sandwich in my hands. Every time I slightly shifted my head or chewed too hard, the vibration made my vision shake, turning the students and the trees into a mess of limbs and leaves. The sun felt so nice on my skin. The sound of birdsong cast a soft glow that helped me relax. Just when I was starting to forget about it, caught up in the moment, there I saw him. No, not him. I saw it again. Sitting on the grass in the shade of the biggest oak tree, just a few steps away from me. I stopped chewing, and I almost choked. I immediately put the remaining half of my sandwich back into the wrapper and pushed myself up from the bench. To minimize the dizzying trails, I tried to keep my head as still as I could. One careful step forward, then another, and another. A group of students were eating and talking on a blanket just next to the oak tree. A professor walked right past it, but none of them even glanced at it. Nobody yelled in fear or disgust at that thing. They completely ignored it. Or they just couldn't see it? Why? When I looked back under the tree, I expected it to disappear again. But the creature was still there. It had only walked a few steps to the left. Its movements had been too clean and fluid, colorless. I wasn't breathing. Between where it had been a second ago and where it was now, there was nothing. A girl walking past me left a trail of vibrant waves following her. A leaf fell from the tree like a waterfall of green light. Everything did that. Everything bled color. Every fucking thing. Except this thing. For it to move without my brain painting a single trail, it meant... My God. The thought alone froze the sweat all over my face, down to my neck and spine. It meant that thing existed in a way so incomprehensible it bypassed human perception. But if other people couldn't see it when it was simply standing there, that meant it existed on a different plane of reality? Bullshit. That wasn't possible. Now that I was much closer, I could make out the tiniest details of its body. As a vet student, I'd studied the strangest animals on this planet, so my training kicked in. This was a biological impossibility. The skull was elongated, almost resembling a horse, but the periorbital bone was way too stretched, almost warped. The red skin looked rotten, like that of a decaying corpse. Wet, oily. All over its back, sprouting from the bones of its hunched spine, were several growths. They were made of flesh, like tumors, masses of these fleshy tubes, growing like small trees but made of pulsing veins. On them, patches of exposed muscle tissue leaked a brownish secretion that glistened in the sunlight. Its whole body was skeletal, like it had been starving for months and yet was alive. And then the eyes. Jesus, those eyes. They sat on the sides of that horse-like head, massive and bulging. Two globes of white, streaked with a spider's web of red veins. It had no eyelids, just those wet eyes that resembled two dripping fried eggs. I took another step closer. A few seconds later, when my vision cleared up again, the creature was no longer facing the grass. Its deformed head snapped sideways. Those horrific eyes were staring directly at me. Its mouth was smiling, and one of its skeletal hands had risen. It was waving at me. I yelled. A rush of adrenaline flooded my body, gripping my heart. I gasped, stumbling backwards. My legs caught the bench, and I dropped to the ground like a dead weight, scraping my palms on the dirt. I crawled back while kicking dirt, hyperventilating. I must have looked like an idiot. The students on the blanket were looking at me. The professor had stopped to check what was going on. They all looked at me, and I heard their worried whispers. One of the students helped me get on my feet and asked if I was okay. I didn't answer, because all my focus had snapped back to that spot under the tree. It was gone. The creature had vanished, and again, no traces. I thanked the guy and told him I was fine. I didn't go back to class. Ignoring the nausea rising from my stomach up my throat, I just grabbed my backpack and walked home alone. I bumped into other people a couple of times, apologizing every time. I sat in my living room with all the curtains drawn. Every creak of the floor, every car horn outside made me jump, terrified that if I looked in the corner, I would see that monster again. Then came this morning. The air felt different when I woke up, suffocating, stale. My body was stiff and tired. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at most. Paranoia. Yes, that was the word. I was being paranoid. Of course, it had all been a hallucination, just a symptom of my damaged brain. I walked into the living room, grabbed the edge of the curtains, and yanked them open to let the sun in. I screamed so hard my throat hurt. They were here. Through the glass, there were dozens of those children. They swarmed the balcony, clinging to the walls and the railing. All of them were different from each other. Some had these huge trunks of flesh sticking from their spines. Others had calcified growths instead of hair on their heads. I counted 4 of them pressing their deformed faces against the glass. Their skeletal, asymmetrical hands, with those 2 long fingers spread against the door, and each one of those melting eyes was staring directly at me, smiling. I slammed the inner door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking so violently I stopped feeling them. When I turned, the room became a spinning vortex. I checked everywhere. Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, every corner, every closet. I dropped to my knees and checked under the couch, then under the bed. Nothing. None of them had managed to get inside. At least, not yet. And now, here I am, under my duvet, soaked in cold sweat. My phone is the only light in the room. I don't know what those things are, where they come from. I don't know why no one can see them or how they can exist. But what terrifies me the most is I don't know what they want from me or what they're going to do if they catch me. But they're out there. Hundreds, maybe thousands, everywhere, existing in a way that no one will ever be able to detect. But take this as a warning. If your vision should ever bleed, even for a fraction of a second, and you see just a flash of rotten skin and tumorous growths, or a shape that doesn't belong to the real world, look away. Doesn't matter where, just look away. Because if they know you can look at them, they won't stop looking at you.
This story has a Lovecraftian vibe to it, don't you think? Like there's a special tonic or a looking glass that might allow you to peer through the veil and see creatures like these. Ugh, yucky. If you enjoyed this story, please check out more of our stories in the playlist linked on screen for our YouTube viewers. We also have a podcast version of the show for those of you who would prefer listening that way. Why not try both? I'd certainly appreciate it. Whatever you do, move slow and don't draw attention. And don't fall asleep.